If I tell you what happened to me, you will not believe it. For I do not believe it myself. I have asked myself, how did it happen? But I cannot find the answer. What I mean is, well, look at me. Look at my clothes. They're so old, they're falling apart. And my hair, it is long and white. As white as my beard. A beard which I never had before. And my voice, it creaks like a rusty hinge. Now I ask you, does that sound like Rip Van Winkle? For that is who I am, or who I think I am. But no, you wouldn't remember Rip Van Winkle. You're much too young. And no one remembers Rip Van Winkle anymore. Not even my dog, Wolf. Wait, I will show you what I mean. Hey, here, Wolf! Wolf! Come here, like a good dog. Yeah, you see, even he does not recognize the old man who calls himself Rip Van Winkle. But then Wolf is old, too. There's also something I do not understand. When Wolf and I started on our walk in the Catskill Mountains, he was a young dog and frisky. That was only yesterday. Now he's old. So am I. But it couldn't have been yesterday. Are you as confused as I? Well, then perhaps if I went back to the beginning and told you the whole story, we might be able to find the answer to everything that happened. You know, I remember everything so clearly. The morning Wolf and I started out on our squirrel hunt. Yesterday, I mean. Or the day before that. Or whenever it was. My voice didn't creak then, and my clothes weren't in shreds. My hair, it was black, and there was no beard on my chin. With the American colonies under the rule of King George III, I lived with my wife and my 2 children in this village at the foot of the Catskill Mountains. And of course there was my dog, Wolf. I remember how my wife hurried about the house that morning, fixing breakfast, helping our 5-year-old son Rip Jr. dress, and braiding the hair of his 10-year-old sister Judith. What a pretty child Judith was, with hair that came down to her shoulders. I can see her now, turning to wave as she ran down the road toward school that morning. And I waved back as I sat on the bench outside the kitchen door.
Rip? Rip, do you hear me?
Oh, yes, my love, I hear you.
And you also hear that?
Yes, it's the cow.
Of course it's the cow, and she's hungry.
She's always hungry.
That's because you never feed her. That cow would be nothing but skin and bones if I didn't look after her, like I look after everything else around here.
I'm sorry, my love, but I forgot.
And you have also forgotten that fence that needs mending, and the wood that needs chopping, and the weeds that have grown taller than the cabbages.
Well, I try, but nothing seems to go right for me. I guess I just wasn't born to be a farmer, that's all.
No, you weren't born to be anything but a lazy, good-for-nothing loafer who hasn't done an honest day's work in his life.
Yes, my love.
And I must have been out of my mind when I married you. But if you think that I'm going to do all the work around this house, then you're more of a fool than I think you are.
Yes.
Now get up from that bench, Rip. I want you to take this sack of potatoes into the village and see what you can get for it. And don't let them cheat you.
No, dear.
We have to buy food with that money, Rip. Or would you like to see your family starve to death?
Of course I would.
Well, then get up and get out of here. And take that smelly dog with you.
Oh, now you've hurt his feelings.
Oh, isn't that too bad?
Come on, Wolf. Let's go to the village.
And Rip,
Yes, my dear.
don't stop at the inn. Do you hear me?
Yes, my love. I hear you. I think everybody in the whole valley could hear my wife when she started in on me. And when she did, about the only thing I could do to get away from her was to go squirrel shooting with Wolf up in the mountains. Well, that morning, I realized my wife was angrier than usual, and I knew she'd stay that way for a long time. So I took my squirrel gun with me when I left for the village. I figured I might as well go hunting after I sold the potatoes, until my wife calmed down. Well, I sold the potatoes, but I knew my wife wouldn't think I got enough for them. She never did. Then I looked across the square at the inn. The sign hanging over the door, the one with the painting of His Majesty King George III painted on it, was swinging in the breeze, and under the big shade tree in the yard, old Nicholas Vedder was sitting with his tankard of ale. I thought about joining him. But I knew my wife would find out. So I just waved to Vedder and started up the road toward the forest. By the time Wolf and I reached the forest, I forgot about the inn and remembered only that I would have to bring home a few squirrels if I was to explain my long absence to my wife. But Wolf and I didn't see so much as one squirrel, though we climbed higher than we ever had before. It was a tiring climb, and after a while I sat down to rest. It was then that I first heard the sound. It sounded like thunder, but I knew it couldn't be, for the sun was shining and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I decided to find out what was making such noise, and I started up the mountain again. Wolf seemed frightened or something. That's all right, Wolf, my boy. It's probably just some rocks rolling down the other side of the mountain. As I climbed higher, I suddenly found myself in a place on the mountain I'd never been before. The ground was flat and covered with pine trees that were so tall and so full that they shut out the sun. I stopped to look around me as I wondered where I was. Then I heard a sound in the underbrush. Wolf heard it too. Quiet, Wolf. It may be a squirrel. I hid myself behind a large boulder and waited. In a few moments, the bushes parted, and a man stepped out. But a most unusual man. He was less than 5 feet tall and almost as wide as he was short. He had white hair and a grizzly beard, and he wore clothes like the Dutchman in the old country. A short jacket with a wide belt, knee breeches that bellowed out at the sides and were fastened with ribbons at the knees. On his head, he wore a wide-brimmed, high-crowned black hat, and he seemed to be talking to himself as he walked. He carried a small keg on his shoulder, which must have been quite heavy, because as he drew near me, he stopped, and he set the keg down on the ground. Then he took a large handkerchief from his pocket, wiped his brow, and turned toward where I was hiding.
You, Rip van Winkle, dumb cop, come out from there already and give me a hand.
How did you know I was there?
How did I know he was there? I knew, so I knew. Now pick up the keg already and follow me.
Where are we going?
Him are questions he's asking. When we get there where we are going, you will see where we are going.
What is that noise? Do you know?
Yeah, I know what it is.
If the strange little man did know what was making that noise, he didn't tell me, and I didn't ask him again. I just followed him through the pine trees, holding the cask on my shoulder. Then suddenly we came to a clearing in the trees, and I found out for myself what had been making the noise. A group of little old men, all dressed like the one whose keg I had been carrying, and all with long white beards, were bowling. It was the sound of the rolling ball that had sounded like thunder. When they saw us, they stopped, and they stared up at me without saying a word. The one at my side tugged at my coat.
So, why do you stand there, dumb cop? Put down the keg.
Yes, of course.
Well, you can do something, right? Now come, my friends. Here is something for your thirst.
little Dutchman drove a spigot into the bunghole of the keg. And as each of the others stepped up to the keg, he was given a cup of the mysterious liquid. I suddenly realized that I had eaten nothing since I left home, and the long climb up the mountain had made me thirsty. The little Dutchman must have realized this too, because as the last of the men filled his cup, I felt a tug on my coat.
Van Winkle, you are thirsty, yeah?
Why, yes, I am.
So here's a cup for you also.
Thank you. I'm also tired after my long climb. Do you mind if I sit down?
Sit, stand, it makes no difference to me.
I sat down with my back against a large fir tree. Oh, it felt good to sit and relax.
Drink, Van Winkle. Drink.
I remember hearing the little Dutchman laughing as I raised the cup to my lips and took a drink of the liquid that had been in the cask. It was something I had never tasted before, but it was very good. I took another drink, and another, and soon the cup was empty. I do not remember anything after that, for I must have fallen asleep. I do not know how long I slept, but when I awoke, I was as you see me now, old and gray. The little Dutchman and the others were gone. There was no sign that they had ever been there. I whistled for Wolf, but he didn't answer. Then I looked around for my squirrel gun, but in place of the clean, shining gun I had taken with me when I left home, there was nothing but an old, rusted firelock, its stock bleached and cracked.